Good morning, a good Tavach. Welcome to a new week. This week we're going to finish Maseches Terumos, Mirza Hashem, as we discussed, and we're inching our way toward the Siyum on Seder's Run, coming up shortly. Today's shiur is sponsored Lilei Nishmas Aaron Nachum and Simcha Kohen, the Shul Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Saba Shmuel Lev, and Binah Moshe ben Yosef. May the Neshamas all have an aliyah. Perek Zion, chapter 7 of Trumah. Mishnah Aleph, we're starting off. We learned in Perek Vav that a non-Kohen who ate trumah, which is an avera, he has to pay the principal plus a fifth. We spoke about a second fifth if it was stolen, if it was as kefil, and we discussed how he has to make the payment with produce that was already chulin, it already cleared all the other trumas and maasros. We also discussed that no Kohen can release him from his penalty to pay the trumah, because it's not Kohen's business to do that. So all that we discussed was only by someone who committed the avera, the shogeg. Now we're going to talk about what happens when the person did it intentionally, b'mezid, what the ramifications of that are. Mean that he knew that the food was trumah and that he knew the severity of the sin, and could even say he ate it with witnesses, maybe. So what happens in that case? So Mishnah Aleph starts off, Ochel trumah mezid, someone ate trumah knowingly, willingly. He pays the principal, he pays for what he ate, because he has to compensate for the theft of the trumah, but he does not pay the fifth because that penalty payment is only for someone who ate it by mistake, and not for someone who did it amazing. If he pays the produce, then the payment remains regular produce and does not become trumah. If the Kohen wants to forgo the payment, he can do so, since the purpose of paying is only to compensate the Kohen for his loss. The Kohen can release him from having to pay. The Kohen cannot release him from the penalty of chomesh, but he can release him from what he stole from the Kohen. So why is he not allowed to pay the penalty? Because he's more than likely chayav malchus. And someone who's chayav malchus for doing the avera intentionally, we also know that he does not get a monetary payment and malchus. It's one or the other. The Rav says that the Bartanura says that our Mishnah, speaking of the payments he has to make, must be referring to someone who was not warned and therefore did not become subject to malchus. And malchus is therefore that he's liable to have misa b'dei shemayim, but that punishment does not exempt him from payment. So if he was warned by two Edom, and he knew it was trumah, and he knew the severity of the sin, then he's chayav malchus, and he's patur from paying. But if he just knew it was intentional, and he knew the severity, but he didn't know, but he wasn't not warned by Edom, then Beis Din can't punish him with malchus. He would get misa b'dei shemayim, and then still chayav to pay the payment, as the shogeg does. Fun stuff. Mishnah Beis. Vas Kohen shenises the Yisrael v'achakach achal truma mishalemes es hakeren ve'ena mishalemes es hachomesh. If a daughter of a Kohen married a Yisrael and then ate truma by mistake, which she is not allowed to do, because because once the Bas Kohen marries out of the Kohanic tribe, she is disqualified from eating trumah. So she has to pay the principal, the amount of what she stole from the Kohen, but she does not have to pay the extra fifth because she is still a Bas Kohen. When we saw Sabisreifa, and if she commits adultery, her punishment is death by burning, which is a special punishment for a Bas Kohen who committed adultery. Ni says the however, if she married any of the disqualified people, meaning that she so she is no longer treated as a kohenes. Mishalemes karen b'chomesh, and then she eats trumah by mistake. She pays the principal and the fifth. So when she's living like a bas kohen, but she marries Yisrael, she only pays the principal. When she marries someone who's disqualified to her, like a mamzer or a chalal, or then she's totally disqualified being a bas kohen. And if she commits adultery after marrying someone who's disqualified, then her death penalty is chenek, which is the lower of the mitzvahs based in, and not sreifa, which is reserved for bas kohen who does adultery. These are the according to Rabbi Meir. That the Chachamim argue with him. They say zu v'zu mishalemes es hakeren ve'ena mishalemes es hachomesh. Both the Bas Kohen who married an ordinary man and the Kohen's daughter who married and the Bas Kohen who married a disqualified man remain subject to the laws of a Bas Kohen in both cases, and therefore, if they eat trumah by mistake, they pay the principal and not the fifth. And if they commit adultery, they are put to death by burning. And according to the Chachamim, there's no difference between the two cases over here. Mishnah Gimel, Hamachil as banav ketanim, if someone feeds truma to his minor children, boys that are younger than 13 and girls younger than 12, ves avadav ben gedolim ben ketanim, or to his Eved Kananim, whether they are adults or minors, or halacha trumas chutz laaretz, or someone eats truma that was separated from produce that grew outside Eretz Yisrael, meaning that it was from produce that was from Egypt, Ammon, Moab, and Bavel. Right? I mean, this truma is different from the regular truma in that someone who eats the truma from chutz laaretz does not have to pay the chomesh. And if someone eats less than Abba's volume of truma, so in all these cases, he pays the principal, the principal amount to the Kohen for what he stole from him, but what is lost, but he does not pay the chomesh, does not pay the fifth. But if he pays with produce, then the payment remains ordinary produce. It does not become truma. If the Kohen wants to forgo his payments, he can do so. The Kohen can be mochel only for his loss, but not release him from his obligation. Sorry, the Kohen can potter him from what he stole from him, and therefore release him from the obligation to pay him back. That's the Kohen's choice. Zeh HaKlau. This Mishnah is now a sum up of the past one half parakim. Zeh HaKlau, the Mishnah Dal. This is the rule. Anyone who must pay the principal and the fifth for eating truma, truma, then the produce he gives as payment becomes truma. If the Kohen wants to forgo the payment, he cannot forgo it. And anyone who must pay only the principal, not the fifth, if he pays with produce, the payment remains regular produce, and it does not become trumah. The Kohen wants to forego the payment, he can forego it. That's a sum up of the past 1.5 paragraph. Mishnah Hey. Okay, now we're turning to a different topic. Um, Going back to earlier in the set, like the end of Perek Dalit into Perek Hey, we discussed the laws of trumah that became mixed with chulin. We discussed that if there were 100 less than 100 parts of chulin for each part of trumah, such a mixture, which is known as meduma, may not be eaten by a non-Kohen. So now that's what we discussed previously. So now we're talking about the Mishnah discusses the law in a situation where we do not know if truma became mixed into chul. It's a suffix. So in the first case, we're going to learn about truma that fell into one of two boxes, one containing truma and the other containing chulin. We do not know which box it fell into. So if it fell into the box containing truma, then the status of the boxes remains the same. However, if it fell into the box of chulin, and the box does not contain a total of 101 times the truma, then the contents of the box will be prohibited to a non-Kohen. So let's see Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Hey, sorry. Perek Zayin, Mishnah Hey. Shtei kupos, achas shel truma, achas shel chulin. If there are two boxes, one containing truma and one containing chulin, shenafla sa truma lesoch achas mihen. And a saw of truma fell into one of them and became mixed with the produce in that box. Remember, a saw is approximately 2.2 to 3.8 gallons. It's a volume measurement. So you have that much that fell into one of the boxes, but you're not sure which box it came in. The Ezim had nafla, but it's not known into which of the boxes it fell. On the Omer, the self shall truma nafla. I can say that the truma fell into the box of truma, meaning that we're allowed to assume that the truma fell into the box of truma, and therefore the box of chulin is mutter. In the next case, ein yadua ezo he shall truma ve'ezo he shall chulin. I know I have two boxes there, but I'm not sure which box contains truma, which is chulin. I know there's two boxes here. So the law is that a non-Kohen, if a non-Kohen ate the contents of one of the boxes, pater, he's exempt because it's not known whether he ate truma or not. And therefore, the second box must be treated as truma because of the possibility that it might be truma. Because one box was chulin, one box was truma. He ate one box, it might have been chulin, so you could assume that it was chulin. But the second box must be treated as truma and off limits to the non-Kohen. At the same time, since it might be chulin, since the second box that remains might be chulin, it is subject to the isra of challah, to the chiyuv of challah, if it's made into dough. Although truma is not usually subject to challah, but that is suffix. That's according to Rabbi Meir, but Rabbi Yossi Poter. Rabbi Yossi says that the second box of produce is exempt from the challah obligation. Since we're not sure if it is truma or chulin, it has the same law as meduma, and just as meduma is not subject to challah, so to this box is also not subject to challah. Av achal acher es shnia pater. If someone else ate the contents of the second box, he too is exempt from paying a Kohen because the box may have actually been the one that was chulin. Achal echad eshtehem. But if one person ate the contents of both boxes, mishalin keketana shebishtehem. He pays the value of the smaller of the two boxes. Because one of the boxes certainly was truma, and therefore he must pay the value of one of the boxes. Nevertheless, if they are not the same size, then you cannot require him to pay more than the value of the smaller box, since the larger box might have been the one containing chulin. So you have a lot of coolers over here. As a suffix. Mishnah Vav, two more to go. Nafla achas mihen l'socha chulin. If we don't know which box contains trumah and which is chulin, like we had the last Mishnah, and one of the boxes fell into chulin, and then the final mixture contains less than 101 times the amount that it fell into. It does not make the chulin a meduma, since we can say that it was the chulin that fell in. And then the second box, which did not fall in, must be treated as trumah. One box, the first box we can say is chulin, second box was trumah. At the same time, it also is subject to taking challah. It was made into dough. Again, that's according to Meir, as we saw, is consistent with the last Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi exempts in saying that exempts the produce in the second box from taking challah, because you're not sure if it's trumah or chulin, and therefore you treat it as meduma, which is not subject to challah. If the contents of the second box fell into another place, meaning it became mixed into chulin, and then the final mixture contains less than 101 times of the amount that fell in, it too does not make a meduma, because the second box may have actually been the one that had chulin in it. So again, you're going the cool over here. Enough l'shteihen l'makom echad. If the contents of both boxes fell into the same place, meaning they both together became mixed with chulin, then certainly there's trumah in the mixture, because we said that one box was chulin and one was trumah, and it fell into a third box. But if the boxes that fell in were not the same size, we do not know how much trumah was in the mixture, because we don't know which box contained the trumah. So midamos kikatana shebishteihen. Therefore, because it to be meduma only as much as the smaller of the two boxes. So therefore, you have to replace the contents of the smaller box, and then it's nullified. And finally, Mishnah Zayin. Zara as achas minhan pater. If one planted the produce of one of the boxes, he is pater from plowing it up, since we're not sure if that is trumah, and the rabbis did not require that it be plowed up. Shniya no but trumah. And the second remaining box of produce they did not plant must be treated as trumah. At the same time, since the second box may be chulin, it is subject to the chiyuv of challah, what is made into dough. Again, Rabbi Meir, this is according to Rabbi Meir, he's consistent on the past two Mishnayos. Rabbi Yossi Potter, Rabbi Yossi says no, since the second box is Potter from challah, he says the second box is Potter from challah, since you're not sure if it's trumah or chulin, then you treat it as meduma, which is Potter from challah. Zara acher es hashniya Potter. If someone else planted produce in the second box, he too is exempt from plowing it up. As with the first box, since we are not certain that it is trumah, then the Chum did not require that it be plowed up. Zara echad shtehem. However, if the person planted the produce of both boxes, he has certainly planted trumah, It's like we said the past two Mishnayos. He planted both of them as one, then it's obviously trumah, and the law of the new produce depends on the type of seeds that are planted. Meaning, medavar shezar kala mutter, something whose seed decomposes when it's planted, such as wheat or barley, is mutter to be eaten by a non-Kohen. With davar she'ein zaru kala, also, but something whose seed does not decompose, meaning garlic or onions, it is forbidden to be eaten by a non-Kohen. Why? Um, because here the law is the same as when someone plants seeds that are medumo, and since the produce of seeds that will not decompose is therefore prohibited to a non-Kohen. Okay, cool. That's the end of Mishnah Perek Zion. We'll continue tomorrow morning with Perek Ches. Have a wonderful day.